Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, let me give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors unto the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that do rule exceptionally well. They continually feed the flock with 100% truth. They do that free of charge. And they uplift and they magnify the name of Yahweh and the name of Yahweh Shai. That's extremely important, okay? Let me say shalom, citations, mercy, and blessings to all the sincere brothers that's out there pushing this word with truth and with faith, striving to be a part of the hopeful elect to the very best of their ability, doing the right thing in the sight of the Heavenly Father Yahweh, and then the Son Yahweh Shai, and uplifting, doing their part to uplift and magnify the name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai as well. Shalom to you. My name is Tabawa Amath of Great Millstone Northwest. This is going to be the Cost of AI Part 5, which I just finished Part 4. I just pretty much set it to upload and then came right back into Part 5 just so we can kind of go through this. This one is going to be the question, how much is falling on the taxpayer? So if you followed Part 1 through Part 4 already, you would know that I've been having a conversation with the chatbot DeepSeek, pretty much just asking it how much it costs for AI. So we found out that it's a lot for the AI data centers themselves to be built and set up. All right, it's a lot for those AI data centers to be able to run continuously. All right, and the major tech companies have put in billions of dollars into getting this infrastructure up and running. All right, and it's all gotta go somewhere. All right, it's all gotta come to a head somewhere. We believe that all this infrastructure is being put in place so that Esau Edom can attempt to play God himself by forcing everybody into that MOTB, that RFID microchip, all right, and then being able to properly execute the powers of being that Godhead, for lack of better terms, all right. If he's at the top tier, controlling everybody who's got this AI, well, he's going to need help monitoring that system, all right. So how much of all of these costs, these billions of dollars that's been mentioned, how much of that is falling on the taxpayer is the question. All right. Let's see what DeepSeek has to say about it. 4:41 right now. Call law 4:41 a.m. That is. All right. It says that's a critical and complex question. The taxpayer burden for the AI boom is significant, but it's often indirect and comes in several forms. But it's significant, man. All right. Don't let that be bypassed. All right. You are paying for this AI infrastructure. Now, it's not as if they're sending you a direct bill, but a lot of the money that's not being given to you in the form of food assistance or in the form of, you know, higher wages or, uh, decrease in interest rates or whatever, it's definitely, it's going towards this AI anyway. It says, but it's often indirect and it comes in several forms. While companies are spending private money, a substantial amount of public funding and subsidization is fueling the infrastructure. Here's a breakdown of how taxpayers are footing part of the bill. Direct subsidies and grants. This is the most straightforward form of taxpayer funding. The CHIPS and Science Act. Okay, the CHIPS and Science Act. We're going to look into this. Damn it, I forgot. I can't just copy it. It'll make me, have to select on how to copy it, but I'll try to look into that. The CHIPS and Science Act says this is the biggest example. It provides 52 billion in subsidies to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing, which I believe a lot of the manufacturing right now is done in Taiwan, which is why America has a big interest in keeping China away from Taiwan, so that way they can continue getting those chips. Okay. It says who benefits. Who benefits? Companies like Intel, TSMC, and Samsung are receiving billions in direct grants and tax credits to build new chip fabs in the U.S. All right, which I believe Samsung is a Japanese or a Korean. I believe it's Japanese, but it could be a Korean company. Anyway, anyways, all right, they're building. They're receiving billions to build chip fabs or factories here in the U.S. While not exclusively for AI chips, these fabs are essential for producing the advanced semiconductors that power AI data centers. Taxpayer costs billions of dollars allocated directly from the federal treasury. All right. So not given to you, the American people, but given to these companies to build chip making manufacturing facilities. All right. It says, which again, this most likely is not just about AI. They need those chip building factories too, because there's a lot of chips that needs to go into the people. All right. It says the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, right. It says reduces billions. I'm sorry, includes billions in tax credits for green energy and manufacturing, which companies building data centers can leverage. Slovakia for that. It says state and local tax incentives. This is often the largest taxpayer subsidy at a local level. How it works: to attract massive data center projects and construction jobs they bring, states and countries offer incredibly generous tax breaks that these often include sales tax exemptions, waiving sales tax on hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment purchased for the data center, property tax abasement, all right, exempting the data center facility itself from property tax for 10, 20, or even 30 years. Now, you and you don't get no property tax exemptions, all right? If you buy a house, okay, if you buy a house, you don't get a property tax exemption for 10, 20, or 30 years, okay? But these data centers that they're already spending billions on, okay, and is producing billions of dollars in revenue, according to Part 4, and how they're funded, how they make their money, okay, they get tax exemptions. All right. So again, the wealth gap is just going to continually increase because those that's making the money based off of these data centers are just going to continue making money. Meanwhile, you as a worker, you're not going to make enough to make your ends meet. All right. And everybody's coming to this realization that, dude, it's not this isn't really working out, spending all your time working and not making enough money to be able to just, live. And ultimately, it's going to come to a breaking point. And that's kind of exciting. Anyway, it says utility tax breaks, discounts on electricity and water, which is crazy because you don't get a discount on your electricity or your water, and you use way less. Okay, they use what it takes to power a city for their data centers. We covered that in and I want to say either in part 2 or part 3 of the cost of AI, how the electricity, the amount of electricity and the amount of water that they're using is what would be for a medium-sized city, okay? And that's for a single data center, all right? Actually, that might have been for a data complex, which is multiple data centers together. But the point being that it's a large amount that they're using, and ultimately that's coming down on your electricity bill. And I know that's something that the elder Yashawamba has said before, all right, that the AI data centers, the electricity used is being passed down onto your electricity bill, man. Okay. It says a stunning example in Loudoun County, Virginia. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce that or not. Loudoun, something like that. Anyway, Data Center Alley. All right, that's what they call it, Data Center Alley. Data centers were granted an exemption on the county's personal property tax on computer servers. This cost the country, this cost the county an estimated 130 million per year in lost revenue by 2022. The schools, police, and infrastructure in that county are missing out on that revenue. So that could have gone to the schools. That's 130 million that could have been going to the schools. That could have been going to the police force and to the infrastructure, repairing the roads, city works, the city's got to go replace the light bulbs in the city streets, fix these potholes. so on and so forth. Make sure this bridge isn't going to collapse. And instead, that's going to um, the AI data center, all right? Or data centers, plural, all right? It says, which either means higher taxes on residents or reduced services, all right? So you're either paying higher taxes because of this, or the services are reduced. Your police isn't properly getting funded, all right? They still got to work with those outdated systems or whatever it is that they have, which I'm not a fan of the police, but you know that they need their funding, right? It's not just the police, the garbage truck, you know, the yeah, the post office, all of those individuals, man, the schools, like it says, all right, to teach your little badass kids, okay, so on and so forth, man. It says uh, massive publicly funded energy and infrastructure upgrades. AI data centers are causing an unprecedented surge in electricity demand, and utilities, often regulated monopolies, are passing these costs on to the public. Again, Elder Yashawamba has brought that out a number of times, okay? In his news and prophecies and his videos that he's been doing. A number of times he have made he's made mention of how the cost of running these AI data centers, the electricity cost is being passed down to you. The utility cost is being passed down to you, okay, to the public. That's coming down on your bill, all right? So they may not be handing you a bill for the data center itself, but you would notice that your electricity bill has gone up, all right? And I believe in part three of the cost of AI, part three, I believe I even mentioned my own personal um, bill and what it was compared to what it is that the data centers are drawing in. Okay, so it says grid upgrades, building new substations, transmission lines, and power generations to serve a single large data center can cost hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. Who pays? While the data center company may pay a portion, a significant share of these infrastructure upgrades is typically approved by public utility commissions and added to the utility bills of all rate payers. Okay? Residents and small businesses in the form of higher rates. So your electricity bill is going up. So that way that AI data center can continue running. And they're talking about once they get an AI data center profitable, they look to go and build another one, okay? And even further upgraded one. So this is just a continual cycle, man. It's a snowball that's rolling downhill and it's picking up speed and it costs a lot of money, okay? This is staggering, you know. This is unsustainable. But that's why we keep bringing up Habakkuk, the second chapter, verse 6, where the word ibatyat is used, okay, where it says, woe to him that ladeth himself with thick clay, okay, rough phrasing of the scripture, you know. And that word ibatyat means thick clay, which the elder apostle Tahar was the first one to bring that out. That it means thick clay, and that's what Esau, which means heavy debt. Thick clay means I'm sorry, I said it means thick clay. The word there is thick clay. The word itself in the Lashon Kodash is ibatyat, and what that means is heavy debt. All right, it's heavy debt because the Esau is building this off of debt, and it just creates more and more debt, especially for you as a taxpayer, man. Okay, or as a ratepayer in this case, because it's your electricity bill. Okay, it says example, Dominion Energy in Virginia has warned of the need for massive grid investments to support data center growth, which will inevitably lead to higher electricity bills for customers. All right, so you can't get around that. They're just forcing this all upon you. They're gonna build these AI data centers, you know, on land that used to be used to grow your food, and they're gonna make you pay for it, man. All right, whether they make you pay for it in the building of it itself, all right, because we looked at it in part 4 of how some of that comes down on you, but then also in your electricity bill, even if you think you're not paying for the AI thing to get built, all right, which is completely out of your control. It's not as if you're the one signing it off for this thing to get built, but your electricity bill is going to be affected by it, man. All right. It says environmental and resource costs. These are the hidden taxes paid by communities. Water usage. AI data centers use millions of gallons of water for cooling in areas where water scarcity. In areas with water scarcity, this can strain public water resources, potentially leading to shortages or requiring public investments in new water infrastructure. All right. Carbon emissions, which they're always talking about how we got to get rid of the cows because of carbon. All right. We got to track people of their carbon footprint and, this and that. But carbon emissions, the new power demand is met by fossil fuels. All right. It increases carbon emissions and air pollution. The public bears the health and environmental cleanup costs. You see that? So it's funny that Microsoft is one of the major players in this AI boom. They're one of the major players, and their former CEO, head dude, Kill Gates. This guy, Pill Gates, Kill Gates. All right, there's many different ways you could spin them. This guy is against the cows. He's against he's against life and all that. He's trying to say that there's too much carbon being emitted, and yet it's the AI centers that's going to be producing a large amount of that. All right. It says federally funded research on foundational research. The foundational research that made modern AI possible was largely funded by taxpayers. All right. You thought it was just these companies putting their money in, but no, it's largely funded by your tax dollars, man, which is not going into helping you, uh, um, you know, helping make your life better, making America greater. No, it's going into building up this system, all right, and also going abroad, of course, to these places like Israel and Ukraine and so on. Anyway, we'll digress from that. It says the internet, originally a DARPA project. Basic AI research agencies like the National Science Foundation, NSF, and DARPA have funded decades of university research in machine learning, algorithms, and computer science that provided the bedrock for today's AI models. The GPT architecture itself, the T in GPT is transformer, okay? Was pioneered by Google researchers. Google's research was heavily supported by its own profits, but it also benefits from the same ecosystem of publicly funded university research and talent. All right. The bottom line, what's the total taxpayer bill? It's impossible to calculate a single precise number, but we can see the scale. All right. On a federal level, tens of billions via the CHIPS Act and other grants, okay, which the CHIPS Act just came into, that was just signed under Trump. All right. The CHIPS Act was just signed under Trump, under his administration, which he's been in office for under a year. Okay. State and local level, billions more in foregone tax revenue from property and sales tax abasement. Okay. And then household level, hundreds of dollars per year in higher electricity bills to fund grid upgrades. Okay. The argument for subsidies, proponents argue that this is the necessary investment to ensure national competitiveness, create high paying jobs. Well, yeah, right. Create high paying jobs both in construction and to a lesser extent operations. The construction thing is not really something that they can really lean on. All right. I call BS with the construction thing because even the construction of the data center that has a set deadline. It's not an ongoing job that's just going to continually pay those construction workers, man. I know I've worked in construction. All right. I've spent a decade in the construction field. And guess what? All those jobs, you're working a job, but eventually that job comes to an end. Okay. Eventually that job comes to an end. Eventually the building is built. All right. And if there's not anything else on the work, what they don't tell you about construction is they have long periods of downtime, man. You have long periods of downtime. If you don't have another contract that's lined up, you're going to be sitting at home, not getting paid, man. wondering if you can draw unemployment or not. Okay, which the unemployment only lasts for so long. If you sitting at home for 4 months out of the year, is that even worth it? Okay, so they can say it's high paying job. Well, the construction is indeed a high paying job. Okay, but it's only for a certain extent, and it's not going to take a long time to build a AI data center that is mostly just going to be racks and racks and racks of computer chips. That means that you're building the outer shell of a building. Essentially, you're building an upgraded warehouse. It's going to be a little better than a warehouse, but it's not as if there's a lot that has to go into it. All right, there's not. It's not as if there's uh, this elaborate structure that's being built. All right, you pretty much just it's a lot of wide open space that's in there. All right, so the construction isn't going to last for for a very long time, man. Okay, they probably could build these data centers in you know I'll say about 3 months, start to finish. Breaking ground to finish product probably is and I'm being a little generous with that, with 3 months. Okay, because knowing how especially big well-funded construction projects, they be moving. Okay, they be moving. That's when they're building multiple floors, with different offices and walls and so on and so forth, painting. These data centers don't require all of that. A couple of offices, maybe office area, and then a big wide open floor space where these data rack centers is going to be. All right, and then whatever infrastructure needs to go in for the cooling system and so on and so forth. That's it. Okay, so I call BS with trying to say construction for high paying. Yeah, that only works until that building is done, and then what? All right, you just got to keep chasing that line of building those buildings, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, especially if they're trying to spread them out. If they're only building one here, one there, that's not enough, man. All right. Um, it says, uh, in structure a strategic industry, they argue the long-term economic growth will ultimately repay the initial subsidy. Again, I'm a little, critical on that one. It says the argument against critics, that's funny. Critics see it as a massive corporate welfare program, and that's exactly what it is a massive corporate welfare program. They argue that trillion-dollar companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, who are reporting record profits, should fully fund their own infrastructure without receiving public handouts that strain local services and increase costs for ordinary citizens. That's right. These companies bring in trillions of dollars of revenue, man, of profit. If you're bringing in a large amount of money on profit, yeah, and you're trying to upgrade your own service, you should, as a company, that company makes enough money to where they should invest back into themselves, like a small company would have to. If you started a business, okay, I used the Cookie Cutter. That was just a company name that I have made up off the top of my head. No relation if there is indeed a company that's out there called the Cookie Cutter, which there probably is, okay? But no relation to that. Say your company, the Cookie Cutter, just keeping that same line, because I just did part 4. This is part 5. Just keeping that same train of thought, that same example going. If you, as the Cookie Cutter, wanted to grow your business, you would have to take your profits and reinvest that into your own business, man. Either that or go and raise more money and give out more equity. But most of the time, what you'll do is, if you started off with the V3 whatever, we'll say stove for the Cookie Cutter, or machinery. You had the V3 machinery, but they just released the V7, and the V7 is so much further upgraded. Now it costs a lot more than the V3 because the V3 is already an outdated model, been outdated for a few years, but that's what you can afford at your startup. Now you're thinking of growing. You're thinking of how you can be even more efficient. Well, if you buy that V7, you'll have to use your profits on whatever you've been making from that V3. You'll have to take those profits and reinvest it in, so that way you can get that V7. You understand? So smaller companies, all the time, they have to reinvest into themselves to for their equipment and so on. So these $1 trillion companies, the majors, they should have to do the same thing rather than run into the government and get money from the government, or pulling money from what could go to the citizens, or what's going to increase the cost on the citizens. All right. It says, in essence, taxpayers are acting as a de facto venture capitalist for the biggest companies in the world, assuming much of the risk and infrastructure cost, while the private companies reap the vast majority of the profits. And what do you get as a venture capitalist? You're supposed to be able to get a return, and you're not getting any return, man. The return that they're going to give you is going to be in the form of a little microchip that's about the size of a rice that they're going to want to implant into you, man. Okay? So this has been the cost of AI, man. That was the last question that I asked it. I don't plan on really asking it anything longer. In fact, I will do one bonus video of the cost of AI, just something that I had went through before even I started this conversation. I'll add that, and then we'll allow that to be the fullness of this. Now, if you got any questions, you're more than free to ask AI yourself about these costs and how it relates to you, in any type of way you can formulate it. And if you do, and it was based off of something that you've seen in these videos, well, then Bubba Shot, come back in the comments and drop me the link to that video so I can watch it and be informed as well, man. All right. Hey, Shalom.